Okay, so hey guys, and welcome back to another Axel 72 video, and in today's video I'm going to be giving my prediction for the Shabaz Masoud versus Peter McGrail fight. And so if you are new around here and you haven't yet subscribed, please do so, like the video if you do indeed like the video, and let's get straight into this. Oh, and of course feel free to join the Patreon as well. You can request any kind of combat sporting related content and I will try my best to get it out there for you guys. I really appreciate all the support in which I've had with it, and the link will be in the description, of course. Now let's get straight into it though, and again, this is another annual Matchroom in Monaco card. Again, they're always interesting cards, got a little bit of entertainment in most of them. I mean, one of the standout moments, of course, was Curiel getting a huge knockout against Nonshinga. I remember that from a Monaco moment. That was the same card as in Cordina managed to get a bit of a robbery victory against Edward Vasquez, and then Beatríz Ferreira fought on a card last year. I can't remember who headlined the one last year, but again, like I say, it's an annual thing in which they do. It's a bit of a different type of event. I mean, Monaco as a country, of course, they like to, do their big events in casinos. You have to be very formally dressed. They'll have only a smallish venue. It'll only be a few thousand people in there. It won't be, a big 10,000 seater stadium or arena. It will only be quite a small little venue. And again, like I say, it seems very formal. Again, for boxing, it's a little bit of, it's going to feel a bit like a, a smaller show to an extent in the way of just the atmosphere, and the fans won't really be as loud. I mean, they've got some really good domestic fights for British boxing with, of course, the main event, and then also McCormack versus Walker as well, and also the likes of Johnny Fisher making his return as well. And you'd think, with all of them, the fans would really get into it, but I feel like Matchroom are probably trying to encourage more fans to come to Monaco to be able to get, Monaco on the map a bit more, and well, not on the map, but to get Monaco boxing fans, there a bit more, and to be spending money on the casinos and things like that. But again, like I say, I just don't think they'll be allowed to be as loud and kind of reckless and exciting of an atmosphere as what it could have been this event, especially if it was in the UK, which again is a little bit sad, but nonetheless, like I say, it's a bit of a different thing in which they do every year. And I'm always excited to see who's on this Monaco card, even if that is just me. Like I say, it's an annual thing which they do now. And again, like I say, I think the main event, that fight between McCormack and Walker, the Beatriz Ferreira fight, it's nice to see Johnny Fisher as well. Again, I think it is actually a really good card. I'm pretty sure, to speak a bit more about the main event, I'm pretty sure Matchroom were kind of willing to feed Shabaz Masoud to the Sharks to an extent. I mean, after his, he got announced as a signing with Matchroom, and that was, a big thing for Shabaz Masoud. He was coming off a decent win at that point. I think it was against Jack Bates, and then he got, signed with Matchroom. Then he had a headline slot against Sam Martin on a next gen show where I can't remember, the main event might have pulled out and he was put in as the main event, or he was already, I can't remember. But that was in Newcastle, and that was a real lackluster performance where a lot of people believed that Sam Martin deserved to win just through, throwing a lot more. Shabaz wasn't really doing that much. You could see that he was a skilled fighter, but he just wasn't able to do that much, and he was not respecting Sam Martin at all. But Sam Martin was just throwing continuously and was outworking Shabaz, but Shabaz was just allowing that to happen to try and land the occasional cleaner shot. But again, it was a poor performance from Shabaz Masoud, and again the fans really didn't like seeing that. But then he went on and was allowed to then instantly go on to fight Leon Davis without much promotion or push by Matchroom at all. I mean, Shabazz fought on an undercard in between them two fights, which was a Queensberry undercard. Then he went on to fight, like I say, Liam Davis, where, of course, he showed vast improvements, got a really good performance and a really good victory against, an undefeated Liam Davis at the time. And now Matchroom are willing to have him back, but Matchroom are also putting him up against a fighter in Peter McGrail, who is, a very tough fighter to be up against, and of course is also a fellow Matchroom fighter as well, who, of course he had a big loss when he got knocked out, but he's been allowed to take that little bit of a step down and had that time to rebuild, whereas I just don't know if, they would have allowed Shabaz, if he'd have lost to San Martin, to rebuild, or instead would have just shipped him off to, like say, still fight Liam Davis or a real tough opponent. Again, I might be just theorising a bit there, but still, nonetheless, like I say, he's coming off a real good performance, and now this is his opportunity to prove to Matchroom that he is worth their signing, and that he will go on to be a real good, like I say, name for them. And I think this is a real opportunity for him, and he does have a really good fan base. I mean, it was really evident, and they were very loud in the Davis matchup, and you could see how much they were getting involved with things as well. So he is a good ticket seller as well. So I think he definitely is, and of course, a very skilled fighter. He definitely does have the capabilities to be a big name for Matchroom, but of course we'll have to see that, and I think this fight will definitely prove if he is able to do that. And I think he did, of course, also gain a bit of the fans' respect coming off of the San Martin fight to fight Liam Davis, because he did, go on to win so well when fans were expecting Liam Davis to win, who at the time Davis was going on and stopping all of his opponents. And for, Shabaz, who was coming off a lackluster fight against San Martin, a lot of people were expecting Shabaz to lose. Of course, Shabaz went on to win, like I say, won via stoppage. I mean, won not via stoppage, via close decision, but a real, like I say, shining close decision where he still did look really good. But like I say, I think he did gain a lot of respect in that fight. McGrail as a fighter, like I say, he's had a few good fights in his career in his rebuild. Of course, he had his shock loss against Jarico O'Quinn a couple of years ago, where he was dominating the fight. The commentators were saying all the best things about him. He was moving out of range, in and out of range with ease, and then all of a sudden, O'Quinn was loading up with a shot, and bang. I think it was a right that chopped him down, and he was out on the canvas, and he couldn't get back up. And of course, that's something in which Shabaz Masoud has not had to deal with. But like I say, since then he's taken a couple of decent punches, but he's not had to deal with the same kind of powerful level of opposition. Since then he's not had to really deal with any kind of power puncher, and I don't really think Masoud is that, to be fair. But like I say, he's managed to rebuild well. He's went away, he got a win against Mark Leach, a win against Brad Foster, two guys who were British English level type fighters who have just always kind of been around the scene. Then he beat an undefeated Reese Edwards in a close fight on the Usyk Fury 2 undercard. That was a real good performance for Peter McGrail. Which was still, Reese Edwards coming in on short notice though, but then he went on to beat Baluta, which again was another very good performance for him, because Baluta has always been a guy who's been able to snatch wins and to get kind of moments where he is able to get wins out of nowhere and things like that, and always cause problems to these, British fighters in this division. Of course, he caused problems to Dennis McCann. He caused problems to, Brad Foster as well. He beat Brad Strand in a close fight, which was a bit of a controversial decision. Like I say, he's really fought. He fought Mick Conlan to a close fight as well. I think he fought TJ Doheny as well, to name some of the names in which he's fought. It ended up going to a majority decision to McGrail, but that really should have been a unanimous decision. I don't know why one of the judges had it a draw, I think it was. But nonetheless, like I say, that was a very good victory for him, and to win in that fashion against Baluta is impressive. But like I say, I would just also suggest that he hasn't fought an overly powerful puncher since his KO defeat, which is smart matchmaking. Of course, you don't want to put him in against a really powerful puncher, in his rebuild. Not to say, like I say, that now he's not to face a powerful puncher. I don't think Masoud is, but he could possibly within his next fight, and then he might come stuck. Again, his chin hasn't really been tested too much since he got knocked out badly. To speak about both fighters a bit more individually, Shabaz Masoud as a fighter, he's somebody who, I think he fights his best on the back foot. He's able to handle aggression well, and especially in that last performance. Like I say, in that last performance against Davis, it was the best in which anybody has seen Shabaz Masoud, and it was a real standout performance for himself. He was able to catch slash kind of slip punches, and then shoot and land his own really well throughout the entirety of the fight against Davis, who was coming in quite wildly, recklessly, trying to get him out of there like he has been his past opponents, but then not really having a crazily good setup. He's looked sharp, he looked accurate, he had very good head movement as well. He was slipping a lot and did seem elusive. Even when he was in close, he was able to, like I say, slip, know when to tie up to get out of bad spots, and to kind of spin out of Davis, and like I say, then get out of them bad positions. He was able to, fill his shell quite well as well, and like I say, slip and slide with shots. And just in general, he did seem like it was hard to hit him and to land on him. And again, McGrail, he's another fighter who is typically known to be quite difficult to land on for the most part. And again, that's what makes this fight a very exciting fight. He's a well-disciplined fighter, Masoud. He's got very good feints, very fast hands. I would say he's faster than that of McGrail. He's got very good fundamentals. He's not doing too much. Again, that can be a bad thing where he's not throwing enough, but he's not doing too much as in, at the same time he's not being reckless. He's not trying to force the fight at all, in my opinion. He catches you being overly aggressive, and perhaps he could catch McGrail doing that at some point in the fight. And of course, he was catching Davis like that a lot. He works off his backhand well. He's able to use his backhand, like a straight jab quite a lot as well, which is impressive. And he does move off his punches as well. So if he lands and catches you with a bit of a hook, kind of slapping hook, he'll then kind of duck down, slide off it, move off it, get back to the center of the ring. It's a nice fundamental, but like I say, it's impressive. And a lot of fighters just don't do it. Negatives about him, I think he doesn't really land with a tremendous amount of power. I think McGrail can often land with a lot more power and intent than that of Masoud. But again, like I said, I just don't think he lands with much power. Even when when he's on the back foot, he's not really loading up, which is a good thing. But again, even when he's on the front foot himself, he's not really able to land with much power. He doesn't always put his combinations together that much. He doesn't really throw a tremendous amount of combinations. I think they can be good if he was to throw them, but he doesn't really do it that much. And I think he does have quite a limited punch variety. Again, I think his backhand is really good, and his jab is good. It's sharp, but other than that, like I say, he isn't always throwing that many kind of varied shots. His physicality is limited, and that was on display against Sam Martin, where Sam Martin was basically just walking through him, and he was trying to be the guy to push him back and to force him back and try and push, Sam Martin off with his shoulder. But he just really couldn't do that at all. He's got quite a weak guard that does drop later on. He can sit on the ropes a little bit too long at times. So like I say, he wasn't really doing it too much for the majority of the fight against Davis, where he was, like I say, clinching, then tying up and then spinning him round really nicely. But there was certain times later on in the fight, perhaps when he got a bit more tired, when he was sitting on the ropes. And again, when you are somebody who is inviting pressure a lot, you have to really be able to, either cause some damage if you're on the back foot, or to get yourself out of that in bad positions. You cannot just sit there. Like I say, I think he's often not able to bring back his jab that well. He's got fast hands, but he's not bringing it back to his head. He's bringing it back to his chest a lot, which is again is a confidence thing. If he's being overly confident, then he'll do that. And it means, when he's throwing it from the chest, it's harder to see, but it is, of course, leaving his head open, wide open to land on. He's not got the highest of outputs. I think he, of course, I'd say invites pressure. He can be outthrown when he's trying to be aggressive himself. He, like I say, can't push you off. He's got a bit of a willingness to take shots a bit at times when he is trying to be aggressive himself. I don't really think he's the best on the front foot. A lot of the time, he's not really that willing to change through the gears. He's definitely more of a back foot type of fighter, and like I say, when he had the opportunity to go on the front foot against Sam Martin, he just really wasn't pushing through the gears and trying to turn things up at all in the fight, which again made it quite a dull performance for fans to watch. And again, in that Davis fight, he didn't really have to be the guy to change the gears, because Davis was, bringing the pressure and trying to set a high intensity from the get-go, which just allowed Masoud to then fight at a pretty, fast pace from the start. But again, he wasn't the one that was trying to turn up the pace at any point. He wasn't the one trying to force Davis back at any point. He was very happy being on the back foot for pretty much all of the fight, and I don't really think he gains his opponent's respect. Speak about McGrail. He's somebody who I think does have very good footwork himself from the southpaw stance. He carries better power, in my opinion. He is the more physical and can be the stronger out of the two. He takes really nice, subtle steps backwards. I think he has a real good kind of judgment of range. Like I say, he will take a little half step backwards, a little subtle step back to then create the angle to then try and throw. Sometimes he can be a little bit off balance when he's doing it, but he is pretty much always moving. And, if he gets backed up, he'll circle around off you and, go back to the middle. When he was fighting Reese Edwards, there was multiple times in which he was just in the center of the ring and then would just kind of go back a little bit, circle fully around Reece Edwards, and then just create a whole new angle. He's often, stepping off to the side to make different angles, and like I say, his movement is really difficult to be able to deal with. And like I say, it's another reason why he is difficult to land punches on. He's a come forward fighter for the most part, but again, he's not reckless when he's coming forwards. He'll come forwards, and then when he gets in close, he'll then take that kind of little step backwards if he doesn't think that that's the right time to come in. He's got solid timing himself, and he was able to land nicely a couple counters on Beluta. He draws you into throw. He keeps his hands higher. He's got good stamina, like I say, with a lot of movement. He's got snappy punches, and again, that was on display against Beluta. He, like I say, circles around off you well. Negatives about him, of course, he has been hurt bad, and that has been something which, like I say, I've touched upon. But if Masoud happens to be able to time McGrail, then you never know. You might be able to get a big kind of knockout performance and then get a big stoppage. I don't really think O'Quinn was a massive puncher coming into the fight, but he just loaded up and caught him with a really nice shot. And when McGrail gets a bit too comfortable with his movement coming in and out, it can actually become a little bit predictable. Again, for the most part, he is difficult to land on, but if he is just coming, bouncing in, out, then at some point it can be, a little bit predictable, that rhythm, and then you can get caught. And I think that's what happened against O'Quinn. Of course, since then he's not been caught the same, and he's improved his footwork to, like I say, create a bit more angles, a bit better. But again, he can get a little bit too comfortable being coming in and out, and I think he does want to be a bit more aggressive at times, but I think his corner is often telling him not to be. He can tense up when he is, fighting and moving backwards, which means he can kind of fall a little bit off balance at times. He doesn't use that much head movement anymore. I think when he was actually fighting O'Quinn and them, guys beforehand, he was using a lot more head movement and coming in with his head off the line, but I haven't seen it a tremendous amount in more recent fights. He doesn't have a large output either, even though he is a bit more of a pressure fighter. He's not putting too much combinations together himself. He can be feinting a bit too much. He can get caught when starting to trade a bit more later on. Yeah, like I say, who do I think is going to win? I think that Peter McGrail is going to be able to win. I think he's going to be able to win by unanimous decision. I think, unlike Liam Davis, McGrail is going to come in, like I say, a lot more disciplined, a lot wiser on the front foot. He's not just going to walk on to every backhand that Masoud throws. You might get caught with a couple, because I think Masoud is faster than McGrail, but I think he'll, realise that that's a problem. He'll then start to use different angles. He'll then start to be creative with it. He'll come in and out a bit more. He'll create a bit of a variety of openings. I think he'll land, a single shot every so often. He won't just let Masoud tie up with him and spin him off and just kind of plant his feet in front of him. It's going to be a much tougher night for Masoud, in my opinion. And I think Masoud, that was him on his best in that performance against Davis. And I think, just he won't be able to just be on the back foot, like I say, for the entire fight and be able to win a fight against McGrail, I don't believe. Where, like I say, I think McGrail is going to be able to win by unanimous decision. I don't think he's going to be able to stop him, but I think, like I say, either way, I don't believe that Masoud will be able to get a stoppage either against McGrail, just from the lack of power in which Masoud does throw with, in my opinion. Then, who he can go on to fight next? I mean, it will be interesting because, of course, he'll become EBU European Super Bantamweight champion. He might already be EBU champion. I'm not entirely sure off the top of my head. But then who can go on to fight? I mean, a Dennis McCann fight would be a great fight, but I don't know what's happening with McCann still with his comeback off his drug scandal and all that kind of stuff. I don't know if he was positive or what. So, McCann's not really been fighting that much, even though that would be a great fight and that was scheduled to happen, I believe. That's why Reece Edwards came in thinking about it. So again, that would be excellent to happen if that was to ever happen. If not, then you got to start kind of pushing McGrail up the rankings a bit more, and the likes of like an Akhmadaliev could be a really good fight as well. Of course, he's coming off a loss to a Inoue, which was quite a convincing loss, but I'm not to say that McGrail is quite ready for Akhmadaliev, but maybe, or a Tapales, he's a bit on the later side, or if you want to go a little bit further down the rankings, and Ankayas maybe, just one of these world level guys who have fought at a world title level and have previously held a title as well. That could be that kind of level in which we're kind of looking at from McGrail, because really, if he's not fighting McCann, then he's pretty much done with the British kind of level scene at the moment. So that's kind of the route in which I would like to see him go down. Moving on to speak about the co-main event, in which I wanted to give a prediction for. This will be the last fight in which I'm giving a prediction for this card. And of course, it's Beatríz Ferreira versus Elif Turhan, which is for the IBF World Lightweight title. And for Beatríz Ferreira, I'm not really too sure what's happening with her career. I mean, she's gone from headlining a Most Valuable Promotion show earlier this year to then she went on to a smaller show back in her home country of Brazil to bring her titles back, and now she's on an undercard of a Matchroom show where she was, the same time last year. Of course, like I say, she was on the undercard of the last Monaco show, and she's now onto her fourth title defense of her belt, and she's, like I say, not really. Like I said, I just don't know what's happening with her in her career. Of course, there's always been the talks of her going to the Olympics. Again, is she wanting to do that again? Is she, like I say, with MVP or in talks to fight with MVP? Why did she fight on an MVP main event slot? If she's not with MVP, it's a bit weird. Why did she fight in Brazil? Was that just because she wanted to bring a belt back home? That would make a bit more sense, and I'm not against that. That's fair enough. But I don't know why she would go from headlining an MVP show to then co-main eventing a Matchroom show. Again, it's just a little bit confusing in my opinion, when I think she's actually fighting the toughest opponent in her whole career in this fight. But again, like I said, it's a little bit confusing what's happening in her career. But in her actual performances, she's looked really good. I mean, I think she is probably one of my favourite female fighters around at the moment for actual skill ability wise. She got a really good victory against Ferreira on that MVP show, and then she fought Monio in her last fight, and that was a very, a clean, clear performance as well, convincing performance. So I think, like I say, she's been looking real good and real dominant. But another fighter who has been looking really dominant as well in her last performances is Turhan, and she's another fighter that is promoted by Matchroom. I'm not too sure how long she's been promoted by Matchroom. She is kind of going under the radar. I mean, Matchroom had her on the first Crocker Donovan undercard, I think it was that, and that's where she managed to get a big first round knockout against Shauna Brown in her home country in Belfast, in, like I say, TKO in round one. And then she went in her most recent fight to beat an undefeated French fighter called Rima Ayadi in her home country, again via TKO. I think it was in round 5 or 6. And Matchroom, posted on their socials and, congratulated her on that. And so they do promote her. She is with them, but they just haven't really kind of mentioned too much about her. They haven't really tried to push her that much, and I doubt they probably will for Fight Week. Again, this is recorded post Fight Week, so I mean pre-Fight Week, sorry. So again, like I said, I'm just not really too sure why they've not pushed her a little bit more as a fighter, as a female fighter who's been going out there and getting knockouts continuously in her last 3 fights that are big knockouts, are like actually flooring your opponents. It's not just a ref jumping in and getting involved. As a promoter, you feel like you should be kind of all over that. It just doesn't really happen that much in the female kind of scene, and it's exciting. But again, of course, Matchroom haven't really been doing that, so nonetheless, they've put her up against a very tough opponent, of course, in Beatriz Ferreira. But I do believe this is the toughest fight of Ferreira's professional career so far. Of course, she's been a very well renowned amateur. Ferreira, I believe, has improved a lot in her defensive fighting as well, and I think that has been on display in the more recent fights with really good switching of stances to get out of bad spots. But of course, she does have to be wary doing that against Turhan, and she could be possibly, leaving an opening if she does that, and she can't be getting too comfortable with, Turhan. Like I say, the power in which we've seen from Turhan could definitely cause Ferreira or any fighter an issue, and could shock or surprise Ferreira, because Ferreira has been hit, and she isn't, the hardest to hit. You can land on her, and of course, if Turhan does that and Turhan catches Ferreira off guard through her power, then it could be interesting to see how Ferreira deals with that. Turhan, though, she does get very wild when she's throwing, and it is very, hard to see the fundamentals when she is throwing and when she is trying to get the stoppage, and that was on display a bit when she was trying to get the knockout fully in her last fight. Her opponent got dropped, then she came back up and she was very wild and reckless and all over the place until eventually, her opponent went down again. It might be disrupting to Ferreira, but I think Ferreira, if she can get her head movement going, she might be able to find and slip and find the openings herself, as, in my opinion, the more skilled fighter out of the two of them. I think Beatriz Ferreira is going to win. I think she's actually going to get a stoppage and win via TKO in round 4. Ferreira isn't the most powerful punchers, even though it does look like she's strong and carries a decent punch on her. She's not really. But I think when Turhan is, going past the rounds in which she's used to fighting in a more recent contests, I think she's going to become a little bit wilder. And I think, like I say, Ferreira can keep her hands up, be careful when she's switching stances, not to do it too much and to get caught. Or even if she does get caught, I think she could go back to her boxing well. Or if it goes toe to toe, it could be a really entertaining fight. But I think Turhan at some point will gas herself out if she tries to go for a stoppage and gun for a stoppage a bit too much. And then Beatriz Ferreira will be able to go out there and actually be able to get a knockout performance herself. So I'm going to go over TKO in round 4 or 5 for Beatriz Ferreira. Then who she can go on to fight next? I mean, if she's able to stop probably, the other top contender in the lightweight division in Turhan, then really she should just go on to then fight for one of the other belts, really. I mean, I'm surprised it hasn't happened yet. I mean, Dubois, WBC belt, she's with Boxer, so that probably won't happen. Harper, WBO belt, she's just signed with Most Valuable Promotions, so maybe that could happen if Ferreira's, gonna go to Most Valuable Promotions. Again, I'm not too sure what's happening with her contract. And then Stephanie Han versus Holly Holm is fighting for the WBA belt. So again, that could happen. The winner of that could fight Ferreira if she's willing to fight an MVP again. Or if not, I mean, Pamela Sarwa is the IBO champion. She just beat Karen Carabajal, who of course has fought at a high level. She's an unbeaten Italian fighter, so maybe that could happen as another contender. But she should be fighting the biggest name in the division, Ferreira, and really staking a claim for herself to be, one of the best Brazilian female fighters around at the moment, slash Brazilian fighters in general around at the moment. But yeah, that is it for today's video. Hope you did enjoy. Like the video if you didn't, like the video, subscribe if you're new, and thanks for watching.